on. Xbox, show invisible walls. Xbox, play Damn it! Hey everyone, Daniel Kaiser here, guest hosting Invisible Walls this week, and it's Xbox launch week. We couldn't be more excited. Well, we probably could with some other things, but it is Xbox One launch week, and we're very excited to talk about it. And to help me do that on this Xbox One themed edition of Invisible Walls, we have Mr. Daniel, what's your blood worth? How you doing, Daniel?
Hey, I'm good.
Ben, less is more.
Hi.
And Justin, don't call me Spears Spear.
That's true. There's no S at the end of my name.
I know, he corrected me. I'm like, I know. He's like, well, I don't want you to call me Spears.
Yeah.
So
I don't call you Kaiser.
That's true.
I could.
Some
It's
people
just,
do.
It's a small difference.
So anyway, guys.
Kaiser rolling in here.
Kaiser rolling in
There
here
you go.
for this episode of Invisible Walls. And obviously there's a lot going on in the office, getting all the content ready surrounding the Xbox One launch, but we wanted to talk this week about the hardware itself, our initial impressions, and the games that you guys have been reviewing for the site. So I think the best place to just start off is getting everyone's impression of the hardware itself. I mean, you know, when the Xbox One was announced at that infamous event now, everyone kind of says, oh, look, it looks like a giant VCR. And it's big and bulky and this, that, and the other thing. Now that you guys have gotten your hands on it and set it up, what are your impressions of the hardware and the way it'll kind of live in your living room? Bloodworth, let's start with you.
I don't think it's as big as it looked initially on camera.
Okay.
And it's also surprisingly light. It almost it's weird because of how big it is. It almost feels like it's a bit empty inside.
Yeah, I think the original PlayStation 3 is way heavier in terms of like weight class.
Oh,
PS3
really?
would like beat that console to death. Yeah.
Also, they're not loud particularly, but I hope you like fans because I'm 90% sure that in addition to the machine itself having a fan, the Kinect also seems to have vents for a fan.
So you have to be a fan of fans.
And the Power Brick also somehow seems to have vents for a fan. I heard the sound and I'm like, that doesn't sound like it's coming from the Xbox. Is it coming from the Power Brick? I think it is. But it was not a hugely loud sound. I know some people have had noisy PS4s, but neither of these machines seem to be as loud to me as like my Xbox 360's disk drive, to which I would just install everything because I couldn't deal with that anymore.
Yeah.
And then controller-wise, not loving it. It's fine.
Okay. What are you not loving about it?
Well, the D-pad actually works now, which is good.
Okay.
But it's a bit cheap and clicky feeling. It's almost like they overcompensate. It's like, yeah, this is a button. You can feel where this button is now. And then there's like this sandpaper kind of edge on the outside of the analog stick.
At least it's not rubbing off. Huh?
Right.
And then did happen with that.
The impulse triggers, they've added this extra vibration. And if you're all the way down, it feels okay. It's like an extra knock against your finger. But if you're like halfway in, it feels like this weird vibrating buzzy like joy buzzer type thing. And then the last thing is there's this extra lip right on the inside of the triggers.
Okay.
And I've been playing lots of Forza where like, you know, I'm going in and out a lot on that lip. And there's just a little bit of space where like my finger I feels like getting pinched in there and like this sharp edge
Really?
irritating
Actually getting
it.
pinched?
It's not really quite pinched, but like it's almost going to be pinched kind of feeling, you know?
Okay.
It's weird. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that.
Huh.
I think it's an okay guy.
It's an okay controller?
Sometimes I'm hitting the trigger by accident. Especially Killer Instinct, we don't have sticks yet. So I'm actually
the top trigger and the bottom trigger for those spears, right?
And then it's throwing in an extra input.
Yeah.
But
at least the D-pad is certainly a lot better. Right?
yeah, I mean the D-pad
that's
actually
a pretty
works.
big
It
improvement.
works okay.
Yeah.
At first I was like, oh, I guess I'll try to use the analog stick for Killer Instinct, but that wasn't happening. So.
Oh, what do you
The
think
D-pad's
about
good.
line
I got used to
button
the
and
clicker.
box
I
button,
think it's okay.
which I think are called menu and view, or at
Yeah,
least
I
that's
call
what I'm
it
starting to call them.
grill and boxes.
So
But,
menu's like the new pause, basically.
Yeah, it's a little different. It seems to work okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the interface overall is fine.
We'll
I
get to the
haven't had any
interface in a
problems.
second. I'm curious, you know, everyone's going to get their Xbox One home and set it up. What did you guys think about, you know, because obviously mandatory Kinect, how this thing lives in your living room. You know, a lot of people have
Kinect isn't mandatory to plug in. We've been keeping it unplugged most of the time.
Right. But, I mean, in terms of, I mean, it obviously comes with the system.
comes with it,
Everyone's
yeah.
going to hook it up for the most part.
It is actually surprisingly heavy.
It is heavy?
Yeah.
So what about, like, are there official mounts for it that
Oh, it has
Microsoft
like a
makes,
little
or-
stand underneath of it, and I want to say I gotta check again. I think it might have like a little screw-in thing.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if that was on the other one.
Right,
But
okay.
I've been looking a lot of hardware the past couple weeks. So.
Right. So how do you think it feels, though? I mean, most people, as soon as we were talking, or you were demonstrating, kind of trying to sign in, and having to connect. Are you finding that it's super sensitive in terms of its positioning, or is it or is it pretty liberal in terms of where you can place it?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a lot of like the actual recognition stuff. I still feel like it's a bit awkward, like you doing the in and out thing with your hands, and the voice commands, they're sort of hit and miss.
Okay.
And it seems to be really sensitive to there being a lot of chatter and noises. Like if you want to say something to the Xbox, like stop everything, Xbox, do this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, and I've heard other people kind of say that they've had issues, even though people in the room weren't saying something, just because there are a lot of people in the room, it was like the Kinect was getting confused.
Okay.
I don't know what anyone else has had.
Ben, how
experience
much
with those
exposure
things.
to the voice commands have you had?
Not a lot. I've mostly just used them in Dead Rising 3, but I would say at least it's not perfect, but I think the Kinect, as far as voice commands go, is better, and I've had pretty good success navigating the menus with the voice commands.
Okay.
So I hope that continues to improve. My biggest problem with the interface is it's really just like this collection of boxes, and the interface seems really cluttered. And I've been having a hard time finding things. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
there's
you
a
guys
lot
have
of
had
little
the-
hidden things, and then when you snap something, like I had to look at somebody else's review to find out, like, oh, that's how you move between the snap window and the main window. There's little things
You're having
like
trouble
that.
finding apps or finding games? Or
Finding where things are hidden. Like, we still haven't gotten a straight answer on whether you can delete a save file. Because your
Yeah.
save file is tied to your profile, and that moves with you. And it's nice. It's like a seamless cloud save. Like, I haven't had any of those weird sync issues that we had with 360 cloud saves when they started up.
But we haven't even been able to find like where the saves are located, right?
Yeah,
On the
like I
system,
don't know
which is
if
kind of
you can
hilarious.
do anything about
in
them.
the Xbox.
Yeah, well, and Justin, isn't it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that they don't actually display what your hard drive status is in terms of how much storage that you have in there.
No, I think you can look at that.
You can find, okay, so I read somewhere that like it's, I mean, you've been able to see this is how
I
much
s-
storage you have left.
Yeah, I have to look again, but I thought I had seen something
Okay.
along that line, but I couldn't find save data
Well,
specifically.
it plays games at least.
It plays games. That's a question though about the hard drive. How have you guys felt? I mean, we obviously are kind of ramping up here for the launch and just throwing a bunch of stuff on the system. Does the amount of storage on the hard drive seem adequate to what a normal gamer would want, or are you feeling already a pinch besides the controller in terms of the hard drive space?
We haven't felt a pinch yet, but I think clearly, within 3 months, if you're playing a lot of games,
Yeah.
because every game has to install, and that's the same with the PS4. I mean, it's going to be, you're going to have to learn to manage your space. That's just the bottom line.
Keep it tidy, folks.
One thing that I did find that's nice with the way the interface is when you sign in on somebody else's machine, it shows your games and your apps and your favorites and all that stuff. If you have a game that's not installed, like a digital game, it'll have it there and it'll be grayed out with the little cloud in the corner.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So you know what games you have. You just have to install them.
Okay. How has that process been? This is something new for all of us as gamers, the fact that you have to get a disc-based game, bring it home, install it. A lot of them, depending on, how the developer handles it, but, you could start playing pretty close to the time that you start installing. Others, I believe Dead Rising takes like 50% of the install before you can start playing it. Is that right?
Well, we didn't have Dead Rising 3 on a disc.
Okay.
We downloaded it, and someone else was downloading it while I was doing something else, so I didn't start
So
playing.
it's
till
super
after it was
convenient for you.
finished.
So just
Yeah.
hire someone to basically install your games, and you should be good to go. Now,
You can play another game
you can play another game
it's
while you're
installing.
waiting.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about that? I mean, this whole era, this new generation, this is uncharted territory. Well, not for the Xbox, but in terms of being able to, having to install a game and then play it while you're doing all this other stuff. At least they compensate by letting you mess with the other apps, and that's pretty fluid, right? So far.
Yeah, so far I've been able to I didn't do all the guide stuff, but I did hook the TV signal into it, and we just snap Doctor Who in the corner, while something is loading or something like that. Even.
That's actually something I've been impressed with both systems. Is there's just no sluggishness at all with the dashboard.
Super
Like getting
responsive.
from one thing to another, it's instant. You click on it and suddenly you're doing it. You don't have to. You're not waiting for anything at all. Like sometimes, I know, especially if you had a pretty full hard drive on the Xbox 360, you would go to My Games, and it would take forever sometimes for everything to load, and that just isn't an issue here. So.
Well, it might be once the hard drive fills up, but
Right, that's true.
At this point, it's not seeming that way. Do you guys think that most people will learn to take advantage of this kind of second screen experience, the snap functionality, being able to do things? Do we really do we need it? I can see with a big download or an update, it's going to take 10 minutes. So maybe I want to do it, but the examples they use, it's like while you're waiting in the lobby for a match to start, you could watch Doctor Who. I'm like, who the hell's really going to do that? I mean, do you guys see yourself doing that?
Not much.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean,
that,
it's kind of that's kind of convenient, but I mean, you could do this. I mean, you could do the same thing, like having a tablet out and watch something on YouTube. It's just a weird thing. It seems to be the whole idea of them funneling everything through the Xbox, right? Because if you're doing that,
exactly,
unless you have your TV signal split somehow, you have to have the Xbox on to watch TV now, and you have to wait for it to boot up to watch TV. So that's a little weird.
Okay, yeah. You guys, I mean, they're obviously going after the center of the living room. So, Justin, let me ask you about the job that they've done. I mean, this is a pretty monumental task to try to take on television and all these apps and things like Skype and then games and keep everything running. From your exposure thus far, how do you feel the Xbox fares at actually fulfilling that vision of being an all-in-one device?
I don't know. I might be the wrong person to ask. I think that's not for me.
Because you've mostly played games?
They're not targeting me with that. I'm sure there are people that will appreciate it. It seems like they basically know what they're doing. But to me, it's I use it to play games.
Yeah,
more or less.
What about either of you guys?
I'll let you go.
I would agree. I'm certainly not really that interested in the all-in-one entertainment system aspect of it. I only care about what they're releasing for as far as games go. I haven't had cable television in 5 years, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, not too concerned with it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something I might fool around with here and there, but ultimately may just end up not using in the end. I'm actually really blown away that one of their ads is showing the most annoying use of that feature. Where they have a guy watching his football game, and then his girlfriend walks in and just takes over the system with voice commands and starts playing a game while he right at the end of the football game he was watching.
Yeah.
That doesn't make me want to buy this system.
So
Why
do
are
you
you
think
showing that as an advertisement?
Is the Kinect going to enter us into a whole new generation of trolling in terms of if you live with roommates and someone walks in?
I think that they've already had
off.
I think they've already had to patch out some trolling because I remember because when we first got it and we hadn't really hooked it up to the updates and stuff, Xbox off was a thing.
Yeah.
You could say that and it would bring up a prompt. It's do you want to really turn it off or not? Well, after the update, it didn't seem to work.
Yeah.
I think they patched it out.
Yeah.
Kinect's biggest problem right now is it doesn't have an extremely strong use case at launch, right? A lot of Xbox One
Fighter
launch games.
Within.
We haven't played that yet.
I
don't know.
We don't
anyway,
want to play.
All I'm saying is a lot of Xbox One launch games use Kinect, but none of them in any way with Kinect say okay, I need this. Kinect is actually making this game better. I'm glad I'm playing this with Kinect. So I think unless Microsoft can make a game that people care about where you're using Kinect and you're okay, this is actually making my game better, at least for me, I'm probably going to leave it unplugged. They have to, it's cool that I can navigate the menus and all of that stuff works pretty decently, but, I'm probably not going to have it plugged in until they prove something to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or the games take really good advantage of it in compelling ways, which I've always said has kind of been, the onus is on them. They have to make us want to have Kinect in the games. I think, they're kind of making sure that the install base is there. And I know from a developer perspective, now they'll be able to fully support it because it's in every box. So it makes sense for them to invest in supporting Kinect and coming up with great features and functionality for it because they know that it'll actually have a use as opposed to kind of the hit and miss. How many people have this?
Yeah. The one thing that I have really liked though is just the idea that you are kind of untethered from the box. We've been really easy to sign in on multiple boxes, get all of our accounts on every box. And then you can, sign in 4 accounts at the
Pretty
same
easy.
time, and then just switch between them, depending on who has the save file. But even if you're signed in, if you switch over to somebody else, they can play your games as long as you're signed in.
Yeah.
And then when you sign out or you go home or something, then there'll be these notifications like, hey, do you want to buy this game? So it's pretty nice. It's pretty convenient that way in terms of letting people check that stuff out. It's obviously limited by infrastructure. Like if download speeds were instant, that would be amazing. But you'd still have, if you go over to your friend's house, you still have to wait for a game to download.
Yeah. That's true. There's a lot of things I think we're waiting to feel how the experience is going to all come together. A year from now is until we start using this in our daily lives and figure out how much of the stuff actually works and what it feels like to use it. I don't know that we'll have a definitive perception of how it all plays together. But anyway, we're going to start talking about the games here in just a second. But before we do, I have a question for you guys because Microsoft just announced recently that Twitch is not going to be at launch, and it's not coming until 2014 at the beginning of the year is when they're targeting. How much impact do you think that will have? Because, I mean, me personally, with the PlayStation 4, we used it during our live stream. We've seen some clips go up. I didn't think I'd be as interested in it as I actually am. Like seeing people post clips, it's kind of like a different way of sharing socially. And Sony basically has that market cornered for the duration of the year. How much is that going to hurt Microsoft? And it's kind of ironic, too, because that was like one of their big things out of the gate. And Sony was like, oh, yeah, we're going to have that, too. And then the consoles launched, and Sony's got it. Microsoft doesn't.
I think not having Twitch at launch is going to be kind of a big deal because there are a lot of people out there that are, they're wanting to stream off of both machines and not have to have a PC set up to do that. And, Sony kind of has that short-term advantage. Especially as people are just discovering this functionality. I have to mess with Upload Studio more, but I feel like the share button is more intuitive and more convenient. Because I think with Upload Studio, unless you're using Kinect, because I think you just yell like Xbox record that or something like that.
If you're not use the pause. Xbox record that, right?
Right. But I think if you're just using controller, it's like, okay, I have to go to the home menu, I have to find Upload Studio, and it's a little bit more cumbersome that way.
I feel like it's a huge deal. Twitch is how so many people are discovering games. It was really interesting, actually, last week. Need for Speed Rivals was not getting the same attention as some of the other launch games, but then people started streaming it, and the amount of buzz it got before and then after that was huge. And I think, having it in the box with PS4, you have all these, any PS4 game you want to watch, you can go on Twitch right now and watch it. And I think by not having the same thing with the Xbox One, there's just going to be less visibility with those games. And I think
they'll have to go to GameTrailers instead and see what the games look like.
Well, Justin, what do you think, though? I mean, because this is a new age of sharing being, kind of thrust upon us by the console manufacturers themselves. And it is interesting how that kind of word of mouth, when you see your friends playing or associate this game clip with this other person, it actually has done a lot more to the perception of the product and the experience than I thought we initially gave it credit for. So have you found yourself watching other people's clips, or at least recognizing that they're there and giving credit to the fact that this is something interesting from the platform?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see if someone uploads a clip on the Xbox One, you'll see it appear in your feed if they're your friends. So you can still see what your friends are doing. At least it has that. And for the Twitch thing, I don't know. It's a few months. I don't know that it'll make a huge major difference. It's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
And they are right to, eventually get that working.
Well, listen, let's start talking about the most important thing with any console, games. I mean, it's crazy that we have so much to talk about that's not directly game related with a new console, but that's where we're at. So let's start talking about Rise, Son of Rome. Our review went up. And the game I think is very technically impressive. In your review, Justin, you were talking about how it really kind of showcases the power of the Xbox One, but might be kind of flawed as a game in its monotony. So give us just a synopsis of what your thoughts were on the game.
Well, no, I might have liked it more than most people, and I definitely, the game definitely has some shortcomings, and we detail it in the review. It just doesn't really change. But I think basically they have fun combat that's basic. And even though, I get frustrated after playing it for a while, but, I went online to play the co-op with a guy and I'm like, oh, okay, it still feels good to do that parry and to hit the perfect timing. And the executions, it's going to happen whether you hit buttons or not, or regardless of what buttons you hit. But, if you hit it right, you get the points. So whenever I picked it up and played it, I actually had some fun.
Yeah.
Not that it didn't get old, and it's certainly it feels like a real launch title, but
Yeah.
I actually had some fun with it. I think if people like action games a lot, and you want something, I want to I bought this next gen system. I want to see some next gen. I think it will do that for you, and I think that's valuable at this time.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's the greatest game ever.
Sure.
Don't get too hung up on the number. Look at the review. If this sounds like a game you'd want to play, then I think you can get some fun out of it. It's an okay game.
Yeah, I mean, we did some coverage for GTTV and stuff, and so at Crytek, I know that the team was very adamant on one of the things that I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about, because Crytek was telling me that they were really going out of their way to focus on the story for the first time in like a Crytek game, and it was kind of touched on in your review. But how do you feel the story played out? Because I know one of the big things I hear, also Nate Fox from Sucker Punch was talking about, next gen technology allows these game designers to implement a level of theatrical presentation and acting that wasn't present in the last gen. So how do you think that came across in Rise?
They do have good voice acting, and the cutscenes look good. Heavenly Sword also kind of did that. It's a thing, and it's kind of something that runs parallel to the game. What happens in the story doesn't really affect what happens in the game so much as like what you're looking at when you're killing dudes. So I mean, their cutscenes look really good.
Yeah.
The voice acting actually was really strong, and I can appreciate that. But the gameplay is a little more important.
Do you like the characters? Do you like the universe? I found it kind of odd leading up to launch that Marius Titus was never really talked about, in the same way that like a Kratos would be in God of War, or, like in terms of just like, they didn't really play up the character as much as they did the setting. So do you feel that was because of a deficiency in the actual character development, or did you like
I don't know.
world?
I mean, I think there's a silly idea about keeping all the story stuff under wraps. Like I'm under embargo for, a ton of things. I cannot mention that this character
Spill
does
the
this to
beans.
this character, and then that character does that. So for they play it up as some big secret. I don't think it really matters that much.
Okay.
If the gameplay is good and your character is visually well designed, I think he's an okay guy. He's the Rome thing. If people like Rome, you will probably get a kick out of some of the stuff that happens in this game.
Yes.
They're kind of a bunch of assholes, but they had a really mighty empire.
Yeah.
You got to respect
did.
that. You got to respect that, I suppose.
When in Rome. So who do you think this game would be good for? You mentioned like it's a looker. It's a kind of a showcase for the Xbox One. But in terms of people, just gamers, what type of gamer do you think would appreciate what Rise is offering the most?
If repetition doesn't piss you off, if you can enjoy a game like Dynasty Warriors, or you're just like, you know what, I want to see something good and have some good gameplay. You're just looking for a good-looking game for your system. I bought this system. I might as well get a game that kind of shows it off.
That is unique.
If you're
to the
not,
system.
if you're looking like, I only play the most top quality games, and I have this and this such requirements, I cannot enjoy a flawed game, then it's obviously not for you. There are some things you have to deal with. There are some things that seem obvious, like why didn't they do this, or why am I doing this same thing? Why am I getting into the tortoise formation 7 times in the game? And these guys,
you know what? I didn't play it, but the thing that bugged me the most when I saw you playing it is crossbows and exploding barrels. Like what the heck? Why are there exploding barrels?
Well, I mean, if you told someone, this is the first third-person action game that Crytek has made, no one would be very surprised. You can tell but I think they did a really great job figuring out the combat and making it feel good. And for that, I think that's the most important part. All the other stuff is kind of like they're missing the target on a lot of the side stuff, but
Well, in conclusion, one of the things that I took away from your review, the idea that, like you said, Rome wasn't built in a day. Do you see that there's enough here in this game to warrant a sequel and the extension of this franchise? And if so, that would be something you'd look forward to as somebody who's reviewed and played this game. I mean, you could see room for improvement in terms of level design, breaking up the monotony, maybe multiple characters, or what?
Well, I mean, I feel like they put a lot of investment in figuring out how to execute this type of gameplay. And it would kind of be a shame if they wasted that. I think also another developer, Creative Assembly, they're known for strategy games. They've actually made some fairly interesting action titles, and they've never quite been able to nail it. Like Spartan Total Warrior is a really old one. It's kind of a messed up game, but it's kind of cool in some measurable ways. Or Viking Battle for Asgard, I think. Actually a pretty decent game. So I mean, I like when studios try different things. They try to do a different type of gameplay. Maybe they can figure something out that someone else missed because they were stuck in a pattern. So I would like to see Crytek do something else, whether it's following up this franchise or just hey guys, let's try another action game, but this time with feeling.
Yes, and more fantastic foliage. Ben, let's talk about Dead Rising 3 because it was one of the most highly promoted games for the system. Obviously, they switched the mood, but they kept the core essence of the game the same. What did you think? I mean, we saw your review, but did it live up to your expectations?
Dead Rising 3 was a game I was very skeptical about because what I had always enjoyed about the Dead Rising franchise is kind of how silly it was. A lot of zombie games are pretty serious if you compare it to something like Dead Island or things like that. And so I was worried that kind of the soul of Dead Rising was going to go away. I think Fortune City and Willamette Mall are kind of very colorful, kind of outlandish settings, and the grim, gritty Los Perdidos looked inherently less interesting. But I'm happy to say that those initial skepticisms were totally unfounded, and I think Dead Rising 3 is a great game. And I haven't played every launch game. I haven't played Rise. I haven't played Killzone Shadowfall. But out of the launch games I've played, I think Dead Rising 3 is the best one.
Yeah.
And if I was going to get an Xbox One today, I guess this is going up on Friday, I would definitely get Dead Rising 3.
It's funny,
I think it's a great game.
It's not really one of the most next-gen games, though, right?
No, that's absolutely true. I don't think it looks very good. There are actually several parts where I think it looks really bad.
Really?
The texture pop-in is pretty horrible, especially when you're driving. There were several times where I'd be driving a car and I would run into a wall and 10 seconds later, the texture would eventually fully appear. And it just, it kind of looked really garish. But, at the end of the day, once you get over that, it's just a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
And, when I say, it's just so crazy, comparing it to something like Saints Row, one of my biggest problems with Saints Row is a lot of the craziness is sort of, you end up watching it, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You end up watching these characters do crazy things, but when you're actually shooting and hitting guys, it just feels kind of generic.
Right.
But in Dead Rising 3, you're building these super insane weapons, and then you get to use them. And the funniest moments are the ones where you're actually playing, and I think that's what makes it so much fun.
Yes. Now, do you think that you have to have been a Dead Rising fan prior to really enjoy this game? Or
Absolutely not.
No, you just pick it up. I mean, it seems like the type of game where you could just pick up. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty clear, and those moments of joy come from just throwing things together. What were your favorite type of combinations or contraptions you were able to come up with?
There's so many. One of the ones I liked a lot is there's this super combo weapon where you put on this dragon head and you put on these wings and you have these metal claws.
Yeah.
And you can actually run around and slice guys up, but if you hit the heavy attack, you actually fly forward a little bit and slice through guys. So it's kind of hilarious, in this ridiculous outfit just flying through zombies. The other one I like is there's this one, I think it's called Dragon Punch. I think the weapon is actually called Dragon Punch, and you mimic, the Shoryuken from Street Fighter. So
awesome.
That's pretty cool. There's another one where it's just a foam finger, and you just poke, and it just goes boing, 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 and you're just poking zombies. That's pretty humorous. There's just so many. I mean, I was really impressed with how many combo weapons there were. I'm not sure in the exact number, but I mean, you scroll through the list, and there are some moments of that game where it feels like, every 10 minutes you're finding a new combo weapon.
That often.
Yeah, you're finding them all the time. And what I like over Dead Rising 2 is, in Dead Rising 2, when you got a blueprint, you had to go to a bench to build combo weapons. And there were so many things working against you because everything was on a time limit in Dead Rising 2. A lot of times you'd be like, well, I'm not going to go find these items, go to a bench, and then try to finish the mission. I'm just going to get whatever is around, whatever works, and then move forward. But in Dead Rising 3, when you get a blueprint, because there is no time limit, you don't have to do that. And also, whenever you find a blueprint, the items you need to make something are just right there. So it's just like, you know what? We're not going to make you run all over the place. We're not going to waste your time. If you find a blueprint, you can just play with it right away.
Yeah, so they really kind of recognize, obviously, what everybody wants to do, the strength of what the game is all about. And
Absolutely.
I think in your review, you were saying, the best moments happen when you're just having fun, just
right.
Combining this stuff and seeing what it does, and just going through it. Are there any bad combinations or any weapons that you're like, that wasn't really necessary? They could have left that out.
I wouldn't say bad, but there are some combo weapons that are sort of bomb-like or gun-like where you'll only get a few shots with them, and they're meant to sort of be like AoE things. Like you can get this if you combine a flare gun with
gamer's weapon. Then
yeah, exactly. Sorry, I shouldn't say things like AoE, but anyway,
I like DPS better.
when you combine the flare gun and the chemicals, you get like 4 shots where you can shoot this acid round at guys, and it'll kill a bunch of dudes at once. And that's actually not that useful just because it disappears so quickly.
Right.
Like I feel like you're way better off using a really strong melee weapon that will last you a really long time. Like why waste a slot in your inventory for something that's just going to disappear in a few minutes? You know what I mean?
This game probably more than most is all about the fundamentals of it, actually having fun with it. But what did you think of the story and the setting and the characters? Was it intriguing? Some games could be like really polarizing. You look at a game like Lollipop Chainsaw or something like that. You're like, wow, they really went over the top with this or whatever. Did you
You
find
mean like Loco Cycle?
or Logo Cycle? Did you find yourself that it was just the right level of character design or what?
The story is actually really weird in Dead Rising 3, and you were talking earlier about, do you have to play previous Dead Rising games to enjoy it? And at the very end, they throw in a bunch of fan service things that you probably won't fully appreciate unless you've played.
Okay.
But, that's not that big of a deal. Like 60 to 75% of the game, there is barely any story at all. Like
just running
it's pretty
around.
much just, all right, Nick, I need you to go get this thing. Okay, cool. You got me that thing. Now go get this thing.
Yeah.
And it's, normally that would bother me, but it was like, okay, you're kind of just getting out of my way. Now you're just kind of letting me get to the good part of killing zombies. But then it does this weird thing about 75% of the way through. The characters actually get a little bit more interesting. They have some more interaction with each other, and things start to happen with them. I wouldn't say it's a good story, but in comparison to the rest of the game, the time that they put in at the end is... it works, I was like, okay, Nick, you're not so bad.
Yeah.
Rhonda, your mechanic friend, you're not so bad. So it's certainly not the reason you're playing, but it's not terrible.
And lastly, one of the things that you mentioned in your review was that the boss fights or the encounters with these, what are they called? The
Psychos.
was maybe a little bit of a shortcoming in your mind in terms of not really being super memorable or challenging. You think that's an area where they can improve?
It's weird because I read some other reviews for Dead Rising 3, and they said, these boss fights are way too hard. They feel really cheap. They're super annoying. And, that wasn't my experience with it, but I think it really depends on how you play the game, which I think is really interesting. I was trying to do as much side stuff as possible, and that's really where you level up. You get so much experience from doing side objectives that... And also a recommendation is pump all your points into life. And so a lot of times when I got to these psychos, I had so much life, they weren't doing enough damage to me to discourage me from doing anything other than running up and just beating them to death.
Gotcha.
So, but I'm guessing if you don't do that, if you don't put any points into increasing your health, and you don't care about the side stuff, you're going to have maybe a lot more difficulty with those cycles than I did. So I think that's interesting, and I actually prefer that. I like having a tangible reason to go and do the side stuff other than just doing it for the sake of it. Like, it actually makes the game easier. You do feel like you're getting more powerful.
Well,
props to you, Ben, for exploring the game before you review it.
Right.
Ideally, that's what you're...
So it sounds like if you're dying to play Dead Rising, then Ben definitely would recommend it to you, especially if you're a fan of the franchise. Let's put you in the driver's seat here, Blood, because we're talking about Forza 5. I know your review is not up yet. Or when will it be up?
Well, I'm gunning for Friday night. So
okay,
we're gonna hope for that. So maybe around the time this is up.
Well, yeah, we'll leave a little bit to the imagination because we want people to check out the review and get your full insight there. But what can you tell us thus far in terms of, we saw your initial impressions on the site, kind of those moments of booting up the game and getting, like I said, in the driver's seat. So you're the driver guy around here. Are you impressed?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn in some ways. I mean, it's a great driving game. It's got the physics and everything that Forza is known for. It's got that premium experience of now you can sit inside and look at all the fine details of every car in your garage, and they've got all 3 Top Gear hosts now introducing every series of events. But it feels like in order to go next gen, they kind of had to kind of cut Forza down to its foundation a little bit more.
In terms of just like options.
There seem to be less features. I was surprised, like in multiplayer, I felt like I was missing something when I went to the multiplayer options.
Okay.
Because there's like, you can race with A-class cars or S-class cars. Like, what happened to all the other stuff Forza had?
Yeah.
And there's other things that you can do in a private match, but then it's a private match. It's not even like a custom public match, for people to find.
Okay.
Some of the bigger tracks that people are used to, like there are these, I think it's Fujimi Kaido, where you're like drifting down these Japanese mountains. That's not in there. The Nürburgring's not in there. Hockenheim's not in there. And then yesterday I made a discovery that really makes me mad.
What's that?
So,
watch yourselves, everyone. He's about to get mad.
There are
Space.
Okay, so I already knew that there were some microtransaction type things going on, and like I don't really have a problem with people like spending some real money so they don't have to earn credits to get their favorite car or whatever.
Okay.
If you have to play for a long time just to get that one Lamborghini or whatever that you really want, that's okay. What they've done is they have DLC cars ready right out of the box. And they're not just like the obscure, maybe a couple of people will like these, there's some fans
They're
of
like
this
some
out
of the
there.
best cars.
It's like they've cherry-picked the cars that everybody will ever want to play.
Yeah.
And they separated them out as DLC. Some of them are like, you can buy this car for $3. But the big ones, like the Bugatti Veyron, like the pickup truck, the Ford Raptor, and there's like a Lotus in there that I saw. There's a couple other in there that were like really, really big cars. You could only get with like a $20 car pack.
Really?
Yeah. So another $20 on top of the $60, on top of
That's
the
like-
$500.
Next
That's
gen
like-
If you want to play,
Next-gen tax.
if you want to drive a Bugatti
Paying at the pump, I
in
tell
this
you.
game.
That
So-
just infuriates me.
That is,
oh my god.
that's like locking out the Lakers and Knicks from an NBA game, and then
Right.
being like, oh, if you want to buy the other pack. So, wow, that's pretty shocking in terms of just locking people out. I mean, do you think that that's something? I mean, that's done, right? I mean, there's no way to really address that aside from.
I mean, they could address it. Will they address it? I kind of doubt it.
Yeah.
Especially since they're also selling
unfortunate.
like the car pass where pay $50 and you can
Get everything.
6 car packs as they get
So if you want to pay
unleashed.
about $100 or a little over, you can get everything in Forza.
Right.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, we only have a couple minutes, but I want to ask you just about the handling of the game because, I think obviously racing games on new hardware have always kind of been a standard because they're a great way to show off the system. We've seen the game. It looks great. You mentioned that less is, there's maybe less in scope, but very impressive. What about the actual driving? Is there anything about it that feels like next gen to you, or is it? I mean, does it feel much different than previous Forza
No,
games?
I mean it's one of those things where I feel like I maybe would have to go back to Forza 4 and play a little bit of Forza 4 and then compare it.
Put it in reverse.
Yeah, because
I mean,
it's
the car puns are fast and furious.
the
was
handling was already really great, and I'm sure there are people out there that have specific issues with certain things. But no, it feels good. You have a lot of great feedback, and as much as I'm annoyed by the actual sensation of the impulse triggers, they do give you a lot of good feedback in terms of knowing, you're going too fast and your tires are about to break. You're going to lose grip around this corner if you don't slow down a little bit.
Okay.
Cars feel very different from each other. There's a lot of attention to car audio, so that you have different sounds to their engines and everything like that.
Do you get the sense though that this type of experience that you're having thus far with Forza 5 was not possible on the Xbox 360, technically speaking?
Not other than visuals, no, I don't.
Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of that comes down to tire data and stuff like that. Maybe there are things deeper under the hood that they could claim, but I don't
There's
know.
a pun.
But I
Guys
think,
are driving
I think the
me
really,
crazy.
Oh, there you go. I love it.
I do think that really what distinguishes this, and you could probably have set it up on last gen if you put enough effort into it, is the drivatars. And racing against drivatars, as dumb as the name is and as dumb as the claims they make about them are, it really does feel different.
Okay.
And I think people are going to have very different reactions because they don't drive like professional race car drivers. They drive like random guys online.
Yeah.
And
maybe some more aggressive drivers.
Yeah, so there's a lot of getting bashed around and stuff like you would get in an online session. So that's kind of hard to adjust to.
It seems like it'd be fun.
It is in some ways. In other ways, it can be kind of infuriating when you're coming around and you're doing well and somebody knocks you off into the dirt.
Yeah.
And then you have to use that rewind button and lose, not too much, but you lose a couple of credits whenever you use the rewind button.
Okay.
So
buy more,
it's a love-hate thing, but I do think it's a step forward. Cool. I do wish that they had some ideally they would have had some kind of preferences to I would like Gravitars that drive more cleanly.
Gotcha.
Because they are tracking tons of data about you.
And maybe that'll come in time. I don't know. Maybe they'll.
Maybe they will improve it with
$20
for $20.
Friendly Gravatar DLC.
No. All right. Well, listen, we're looking forward to your full review of that, which will hopefully be coming on Friday nights or throughout the weekend. So if you're a Forza fan, if you're a racing car fan, wanting to know if you should pick it up for the Xbox One, if you haven't already picked it up at launch, Mr. Bloodworth's review will be up for your consideration. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it on this Xbox One launch special edition of Invisible Walls. Thanks for joining us. And of course, we're going to have a ton of Xbox One coverage in the days and weeks ahead, including more reviews and obviously gameplay and everything we could possibly put up to help you make the best decision possible about your next-gen console. So I'm Daniel Kaiser for Daniel Bloodworth, Ben Moore, and Justin Spear, and we'll see you next time. And before we go, I do want to say real fast that the man behind the camera there, Chris Wynn, has been with us for a long time here at GT. Chris, can you walk in front of the camera real fast? He's getting ready to leave us and move on to greener pastures, and I love this guy. He's been with us for a while, and I just wanted to say that you've been a great part of GT, and we're looking forward to seeing you do great things in your next digital life. So thanks to Chris Wynn, guys. Let's give him a hand. Thanks so much for all you do, buddy. All right, Invisible Walls. We'll talk to you later. Take care.
See this and other GT shows and game reviews on the GT Originals iOS app, available now on the App Store.